Welcome everyone to session 4 of Founder Basecamp. We've covered a lot of ground over the past few weeks, from idea validation to go-to-market strategies and fundraising fundamentals. Today, we're focusing on something that brings it all together. That's crafting an effective presentation. A great idea that is poorly presented rarely gets the attention it deserves. So today's session will help you deliver your vision with confidence and clarity. You'll learn how to create a compelling narrative, engage your audience, and effectively use visuals to support your message. These skills are extremely important, not just for our upcoming pitch competition, but for every conversation you'll have with potential customers, partners, and investors. So, with that, I'm delighted to introduce our two expert speakers for today. First, we have Julian, the head of design at the Starkent Foundation. Julian is an expert in visual communication and will show you how to use design elements to influence meaning, emotion, and action in your presentations. Afterwards, we'll have David, the head of content and communications at Starknet Foundation. David has a ton of experience in storytelling and public speaking. He'll share techniques for crafting attention-grabbing pitches and also provide some practical exercises to improve your presentation skills. But before we go ahead, I do want to discuss some important updates. First, just a quick reminder about the upcoming StarkNet Hackathon. This is your opportunity to turn your idea into an MVP or a proof of concept. For those seeking technical co-founders, we've launched our project dashboard. So how does this work? First, you'll submit your project details. Number two, your submission will appear on a public dashboard that is visible to developers. The link is above, and we'll share it in the chat as well. And then finally, your interested developers can contact you directly via your preferred contact address that you include in your submission. I'll make a quick note to only share the information that you're comfortable having in public, as this dashboard is publicly accessible. And then just a little bit before jumping into the presentations, I want to just briefly touch on some messages that I shared within the Founder Basecamp Telegram group. So this is about our Founder Basecamp pitch day on Tuesday, April 29th. Quick call to action. If you're interested in pitching, please fill out this form located on the presentation. We'll share the link again in the chat. Fill this out by Friday, April 25th. That's this Friday, so a few days from now. It's indicated, the dates are indicated on the screen. After that will be an internal judging round to select the final candidates of who will actually pitch, and then we will announce who will be selected this Saturday, April 26th. So that will be the weekend prior to the pitch competition next Tuesday. So we'll give you a full weekend to prepare everything, and we'll go after it. So just be ready to go. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Julian to explore the visual dimensions of presentations. Julian will demonstrate how strategic design choices can actually evoke specific emotions, clarity, and bring these complex concepts to life. And more importantly, motivate your audience to act. So Julian, I'll pass it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. Hi, everyone. I think you can see my screen correctly and you can hear me well. Dylan already introduced much better than I can. So yeah, my name is Julian. I lead design at the Starkent Foundation. And today we're actually going to talk a bit about colors, a bit about typography, like good stuff, but some bad stuff, and a bit of everything. And I have a question to kick things off, and I don't know if somebody's brave enough to unmute themselves. I don't know if that's even possible in this webinar thing. But my question is like, what's wrong about this site? And if you don't want to speak up, that's fine. You can keep it for yourselves and think about
I
it.
think it looks good.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
think it looks great. I love this website.
um, all right. That leads me to my next question then. What is design? And again, we all have definitions of design, right? And probably you do have a definition that, again, you don't need to unmute yourself and speak up, but we all have a definition of design. And usually, I'm not saying this is the case right now, but usually That definition, for a lot of people, design is that stunning image, is the super slick login screen, is the GIF that you cannot stop watching, is, I don't know, the landing page filled with like scroll effects, animations, interactions, and whatnot. And sure, that's a part of design. More specifically, that's what, right? And the thing is, those are like the surface of design in some way. Like they're visual wrappers, right? Like this motion is aesthetic. It may look nice, but they're only vehicles in a way. They're not the whole story because they're only the what. And that means that when you think deeper about it, design is not only the what, but more importantly, design is the what for. And I know David would agree with this. It's about why something exists. What do you want to achieve with that login screen, for example? Why that GIF? What do you want to achieve with that? Why that image? Why that brand style? Why that layout? Why that typography hierarchy? And etc. etc. Design is how we evoke those emotions or influence that behavior, or in this case, more relevant maybe to this exercise, create clarity, right? Every what should serve a what for, always. Like it's not just what it is, it's what it's meant to do. And that's where design thinking, when the design thinking journey begins. And in this journey, there's no personal preferences. I've been doing this for 20 years. Nobody cares what I personally like or not, if I would wear it on a t-shirt or not. There's not I like this or I like that. It's about what serves a goal and what doesn't. And that's it, right? So now let's go back to the website I showed you before, the one that Dylan liked. And maybe, just maybe, some of you thought, oh, this is shitty. I don't understand it. This is not a good website, which was a bit my intention with this. If I tell you that this site was created as a parody of those flashy intro pages from the late 90s, the kind of, they played while the website was loading, and for youngsters, this used to be a thing. Like these intros, they were literally everywhere, and honestly, they were pretty annoying because they used to play sound. And Zumbo.com became one of the first viral web memes. Like, it even made its way to Wikipedia, you can check yourself, just for that only reason. So it was obviously successful on its intent, right, to become a parody. So knowing all of that, would you say that there's anything wrong with this website? Dylan, I bet you still don't see anything wrong, and I don't think there is, because that's the point. Like context changes everything. Context changes the perceptions, right? The what for gives meaning and value to the what. So now let's see a few examples of the what for that it was not very accounted for. This photo is probably great. Probably the model was gorgeous. It was made in a really, really expensive studio, but does it work? No. Why? Because this is not a photographic showcase or a museum, right? It's a booth design. And in that context, there's like layers and other elements over the build of the booth, and the image clearly loses some of its clarity. So in this case, they didn't design for the space. They just dropped an image. And again, it's not what the image is. We may like it or not. Like, again, doesn't really matter. It's what it is for. Let's go here. You can think, I like that typeface. I hate that typeface. I like the copy. I don't like the copy. It doesn't matter. It's not the point. Like, it's not about personal taste, right? Like, does this really work? Unless they don't have good food, I would say that this was a miss, right? Let's keep going. Icons. Are they cute? Slick, dated, trendy? I don't know. Who cares? Again, it's not about the style. Like, the question is me, identify myself as a man. Where should I go? Left or right? Right? And this is the point. Design should reduce friction, not add friction. And it does by answering specifically that question, what for? And if we go to digital world, that it's more relevant to what we're doing here, take a look at this and try to quickly read and understand what's happening here. Design is not about it looks nice, I like the font, the colors or not. Like it's about how fast and clearly someone gets what they need, right? I need to read, I cannot get it. Whether I like the font or not is circumstantial. This is not great, right? So let's circle back to the first question that I was posing. What is design? And there are many, many, many fancy definitions out there about design, and honestly, most of them are valid in their own way. I do have my favorite, which doesn't mean it's the universal truth, but it's my truth. It's how I interpret design, and how after more than 20 years working on this, I find the most meaning and success. And its design is the rendering of intent. Yes? Think about it for a second. Design is the rendering of intent. If we break this down, rendering means giving form to something, making it real, making it tangible, making it visible. It's not just imagining or thinking, it's execution, right? Output, craft, design renders. It makes something take shapes. You can see it. You can almost touch it. The rendering is the what. And then we have intent. Intent is the what for, the why, the purpose, the goal behind it all. Without intent, design is just decoration, aesthetic, no direction. It's an ego fist, something that it won't take you anywhere. But when design is aligned with intent, then that's when it becomes really, really powerful, right? So to me, design is the act of turning what we mean into what people experience. And that's what great design always does. It makes intention felt. Design should always, always be intentional. So great. We could talk hours and hours about design and stuff. I would love that. If we have like a wine, that would be even better. But let's try to focus on how to design presentation decks, right? How can you tell intentional stories through pitch decks? And a deck, let's start with agreeing that a deck is not just a bunch of slides. It's a narrative. It's how you guide attention, how you guide emotion, how you guide action, one frame at a time. And there's no like a sacred formula to do that. There is some techniques that you can do. And at the very beginning, when you sit down, it all starts with brand, right? So before we even think about the story or the content, we need to think about brand. Brand doesn't mean a full-blown identity of 200 pages with the guideline docs, not at this stage. No, no, no. Forget about all of that. You know that a brand is how you show up, and you may think, oh, but I'm not a designer. I cannot hire someone now. Like it doesn't matter. It's not about scale. You can have a really, really small design system, and a lot of big companies actually do, and they're like hyper successful. But the real key to success in design world, it's not the size of the brand, and this applies to every single company. It's consistency. You don't need fancy, you need to remain familiar. Being consistent, and listen to this. Being consistent is a shortcut to look professional and well thought, regardless of the size of the brand or regardless of the creative decisions. And that's half of the game, right? Because when every slide feels like it's coming from the same world, you build trust. Trust is invaluable. And that's going to help you land your message so much more efficiently. But let's go back to design. When you're designing anything, there's something called the 7 elements of design. And I think that for a non-designer audience, this could be a great starting point. So these are the 7 essential elements of design, or actually my version, since traditionally typography isn't one of the official elements of design, but in communication and in digital design, it's way too important to leave it out. So I added it in and I removed dot, just in case somebody wants to Google check me. Anyway, you can see them as the raw materials we work with when we're creating anything visual, a slide deck, a poster, an interface, or even a brand identity. I don't want to go too much deeper into this, but we have like line that is like, you can use it to divide space, lead an eye, like their lines are literally everywhere. They can be straight or they can be curved, thick, thin, and all of that. You have shapes, that is when line pretty much connect. So they form like shapes and they can be squares, circles, they can be more organic like blobs or more fluid, less organics. Like shapes, they define structure and layout. And also keep in mind that your layouts are forming shapes themselves, right? Then you have form, that it's when shapes, they take volume. So that's traditionally 3D, but in our world, maybe doesn't need to necessarily be like a 3D. It could be like shadows, right? So anything that pretty much add a sense of depth, it's interpreted as form, which is another of the elements. Then color, we all know color is probably one of the most powerful, at least in my opinion. I'm not going to get too deep into color psychology, but there's tons of documentation about that online. But a bold red might say urgency in certain contexts. Well, like I don't know, soft blue might be more signal calm or something like that. Yeah, again, there's ton more if you want to do research. Space is the most underrated one, and I think it's also one of the most important ones. It's essential. It's the empty areas around your elements, right? And it's what gives everything clarity and balance. And space makes the content readable and clean in a way. You have texture that, it's a visual thing. Like think of grain, paper, metal, noise, gradients. I don't know. Texture brings a sense of depth and tactility to a design in some way. And finally, typography, technically not one of them, but too hard to leave it out nowadays. But yeah, typography shapes how people experience your message. The type you choose and how you use it speaks volumes about the tone, the clarity, and the emotion you're trying to evoke. So whenever you're designing something, for example, a V1, V0.1, if you will, doesn't matter, of your brand, taking these pieces into consideration and making intentional decisions about each of them is going to take you quite a long way, and it's going to give you control even if you're not a designer by craft. So once you have your brand, right? Things that you can research. There's a lot to learn from people on your vertical out there. Some they might have done good things well, some things wrong. Learn, then define your voice. Are you bold? Are you loud? Are you calm? Are you expert? If you would be a person, how would your personality be? That's actually very important, and it's going to start influencing how you use the elements that we just saw before. Then put down a logo and don't come with, no, no, I don't have money for a designer. You can, doesn't need to be fancy. Like it can be the name of your project in a font that you like and done. But pick the font and export that file as a PNG, as an SVG, and use it consistently, which again is the key to it all. After that, choose your color, maybe a primary color, 2 or 3 accent colors. You don't need more than that. You're not building a huge brand system yet. That time will come, but for now, you're building for clarity. So 2 or 3, it's enough. Choose a typeface. Again, make sure it reflects the tone and that it's easy to read. You can have a main one, and if you want like a secondary one for body copy or not, but again, keep it simple and keep it consistent. And then think about your graphic style, right? What kind of visuals match your tone? Should you use illustrations that are more geometric and clean, or hand-drawn and more expressive? Like, do you use icons that are like more modern or more minimal? I mean, there's a realm of possibilities. And honestly, nowadays with ChatGPT, with Midjourney and all of that, even the execution for that, for now at this stage, it's great because you don't need a designer. And I shouldn't be saying that, but it's adapt or die. And I think this is the way for my industry, for the design industry to adapt. At certain stages, you can definitely leverage those tools, right? And honestly, that's pretty much it. Like, again, when you're early, you don't need 30 pages of guidelines. You need a few clear choices and the discipline to stick to them. The discipline to stick to them. It's key. And yeah, of course, there's like tons of, again, free education resources online on YouTube and whatnot that you can go through all of these ones. But now let's play a quick game because we talked about brand. Look at this. Don't overthink it and don't unmute yourselves. If you want, go for it. But you don't know what services this would offer, but think about what services could this offer? Based on the colors, the font, the style, on the vibe, what kind of services do you think this brand offers? And now, look at this one. Again, I'm giving you exactly the same amount of information, color, typography, layout. Still, the services, maybe not, but maybe they're different. And now this one. Same. I'm not doing anything. It says our services and lorem ipsum, right? But you're probably spinning towards specifics, different services based on what I'm showing, because that's the power of brand, right? Just colors, typography, and some visual elements, nothing else sets the tone and it frames the perception. So before any message is read, the design has already said something, right? Now imagine the impact if that tone doesn't match your intent. Is ridiculous. But imagine the power when it does, right? Let's move on. Once you have a brand, it's time to find a story. And basically, yeah, every story needs an anchor, if that makes sense. So you need pretty much to find your core message, and it's the foundation for everything else, right? You're going to build everything on top of that. This message isn't necessarily a tagline. It's pretty much a central idea you want people to walk away with, right? The shift you want to create in their minds. It should be simple, clear, and repeatable. And once you have that, then you can start shaping a story around it with intent, with emotion, and structure throughout, for example, all the slides, right? People relate to stories. That's how we're wired, beginning, development, ending. It's a structure our instincts understand. So especially when you're building a slide, it's very important. So think your deck in the same way, pretty much as a progression. It should give your audience, it should take your audience through an arc, not just drop a pile of information and do this whatever you will. Set things up, right? Build momentum, boom, and land it. Punchline. That's going to be a huge thing. And again, the core message is what will hold everything together, right? I mean, creating magic with words is really David's expertise, so keep an ear out. I'm sure he'll drop some gems. But from my perspective, as a designer working closely with tech teams and content teams, there's one thing that I learned about messaging that truly, truly resonate in this industry particularly. And I want to show it to you with an example. Let's suppose you're selling an iPod. It's early 2000s, and you need to make a slide deck about the iPod, and you're crafting the last slide, and you made this, right? I mean, it's clear, it's factual, hard to argue, but could it be improved? And a way to do that is like, is this slide speaking to you, right? So now let's see what happens when we tell the same story differently, right? This is the same product, but now it's a story. It's something you can picture. It's personal. You can relate to it. It's emotional in some way. It's not a feature, it's a benefit. And that's the difference when design and content and storytelling They merge. It's magic, right? Highlight benefits, not features. That's the lesson for me. People don't care about your product. They care about what your product can do for them. So in your case, always rethink when you're putting slides together, is this talking about a feature or about a benefit? And again, David will take us deeper into all of this, but this framing helps align design and storytelling from the start because content is design. Content is design. So always remember that. Okay, you get all that. This is very simple. A very small and simple question. Will you present live or will you send this async? Because this simple choice will heavily shape how you design your slide deck. As you can tell, not everything that I'm talking right now, it's on the slide, right? I'm adding a lot through my voice. I'm telling you the story, and the slide is pretty much backing me up. If you are delivering the story, let the deck support you, not compete with you, right? Use visuals to complement your voice, not to say everything for you. But if the deck is going to be shared async, then all the context needs to live in the slides, and it's totally valid to have two decks of the same product, of the same message, right? One for presentation and one for if you need to send async. That usually means, I mean, it usually busier slides if you're going to send async, you're going to need busier slides, and that's okay. You need to be clear on the format before starting, and yeah, it's important for you to know at this point. But if you're presenting live, ask yourself, like, how much do I really need to add to the slide, right? Because you can talk over it, and people will relate more to you because you're a fellow human, right? And also be probably you heard this less is more kind of thing is actually truth because design is in a perpetual never-ending battle for attention, and the more you add, the more you dilute the message and every focal point start competing. So if you don't have to, don't overload your slides, especially if you're going to talk through them. And finally, it's time to design. You have your brand, you have your core message, you have your story. um, yeah, perfect. It's time to design. But I'm not gonna lie here. There's no magical shortcuts or solutions. It takes time to master design, like any other craft. I've been working on this for 20 years. I keep learning every single day. But if you want to start somewhere, there are a few tips that I want to share with you. And they're like the graphic design principles. You don't need to be a professional designer to actually make things look good and feel better. But if you're gonna design a deck, you could benefit from at least understanding the basics. And these principles are like the foundation, right? They're usually the reason why sometimes you like or don't like a design. They can help you communicate more clearly, make things easy to follow, avoid the classic like something feels off, but I don't know what or why. Well, like usually the answer is on any of these ones. And I'm going to go very quickly through them. Balance is about stability. Like you can go symmetrical or asymmetrical. That's up to you. But either way, it should always feel intentional and grounded. Then you have contrast. Contrast make things pop, if you will, in some way. It makes them readable. You can use it to highlight what matters. You can use contrast with size, with color, with spacing. Again, it's a tool on your favor. Then you have emphasis that is not very dissimilar to contrast, which is like what's the one thing you want people to notice first, right? It creates focus, it guides the eye of the viewer. And again, you can use size, color. There are many ways you can do this. Unity is very important. Unity is the one that is linked to consistency. Unity means everything feels like it belongs together, right? Consistent fonts, colors, and spacing. And that talks a lot about your brand and creates the trust that I was talking before. Then proximity, like things that are close together are seen as related. So group similar elements to create structure and clarity. And if there's something that it's not consistent or it's not attached to that, then use space to actually avoid confusion, space things out to avoid confusion. Repetition builds rhythm and consistency. Repeat elements like colors, shapes, fonts. If you do it once, it's not part of your system, it's an accident. If you do it 3 times, suddenly it's part of the system. I don't know why, that's how psychology works. Use it on your favor. Then alignment. Nothing should feel randomly placed. Align elements with each other to create like clean and organized layouts. It instantly look more professional. So if you want a cheat code on how to look professional, align. And this can also be used the way around. Hierarchy is important. It guides the eye. More important things should be bigger and bolder and more prominent. Keep it simple, always. Remove anything that doesn't serve the message, right? That's an exercise you can do when you finish a slide. If it looks busier, what can I remove and the message will be intact? Remove it. And then white space, also called sometimes negative space. It's not empty, it's powerful. A lot of people don't like it. Use it on your favor because it's extremely, extremely powerful. It gives your content room to breathe and it helps important elements to stand out. There's there's a lot more of information out there. And thankfully, we're in a time and age that there are a ton of free, great resources online. You would find hours and hours of content about literally each of these ones. But whenever you're designing a deck, at least keep these ones in mind, right? I'm going to be sharing the deck afterwards. Just have it open next to it. And, every once in a while, check for them because it may take you somewhere. So I'm almost at time. I'm going to recap this. First step, create your brand, colors, typography, logo, keep it simple, and more importantly, use it consistently, whatever that is. Then define your story. What's your message, right? What's the point you want to make? Third, draft the story into slides, like structure it like a narrative, like this arc that we talked about. Like at this stage, like really white slides and black text works. Like if you're going to present live, don't forget the speaker notes because they're definitely going to keep you on track and they're going to help to start playing that back and forth game. And last, apply your brand to your deck using basic design principles, the ones that I just shared, to bring it to life in a clean and clear way. And yeah, if you're lost or need ideas, research. See what others are doing. Take inspiration. That's perfectly fine. The best designers I've known in my career do this on a daily basis, several times per day. So do it, like leverage that. And yeah, on this direction, before I go, I wanted to share a few resources with you. I won't go through each of these ones individually, but just wanted to leave you with something in case you want to go deeper into anything that we discussed today. This covers from, I don't know, design basics to storytelling and branding, right? I mean, I don't know if you want to create a color palette or if you want to choose a typography, if you want to pair typographies or whatnot. So feel free to take this as an action point or not, really it's up to you. But if you want to pick a few that resonate with you or you go wild and you want to check them all, it's a great way to keep sharpening the skills we've started exploring in the session and to, yeah, pretty much begin the design journey. So that's it for me. I really appreciate the time, really enjoyed it. Feel free to reach out on X. I think that's where I'm most available. That's my thingy. And yeah, looking forward to see what you guys create.
Amazing. That was awesome. I was literally tweeting last night how I want to improve my design skills. So I'm taking a lot of these lessons, um, and bringing it into my own life as well. And for anyone watching, Julian is the brain behind so many of our incredible designs for all of our programs and a lot more than that as well. You really should check all of them out. Look at my Zoom background. That stuff is ridiculously cool. The Terraform Web3 background. I remember I was just like, did a good evoke emotion, and the emotion is holy crap, this is freaking awesome. Go to the check out the propulsion website. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna show everyone here. I have the power to show my screen real quick and just do 5 seconds of screen sharing. Okay, I'm showing it. Like this website looks
Okay.
freaking wild. I love it. And you know what my favorite part is? Like it's just fun. There's some beauty to it. My favorite part is this or that.
That was
And
a
then,
discussion if the button should be big or not. If you go back to the propulsion though, that's
yeah,
interesting. If you scroll up with the team, we went through a process, and this program is called propulsion, right? And the classic obvious thing is like, okay, sure, like you can do like a spaceship kind of thing. All right, propulsion is how you propel things through air, pretty much. If you look at the negative space here, it's a fan. And whenever that clicked on us, it's like, okay, we have definitely the basis of our visual identity because there's this fan. And what I'm telling you, probably you didn't pick up on, right? Like, oh, look, like you can see a fan on the black, right? On the negative space, a fan pretty much rotating in slow mo if it would be a real fan, but whatsoever. So, I mean, that to me is super fun, but yeah, just to give a little anecdote because we were spinning in circles on this one until we got into this solution. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean that's kind of the process. It just looks really cool on what you see on the end, like what I see here. But I think there's like a ton of process. I mean, I know this looks awesome too. It's just there's so many pretty things. I love these little things at the bottom right. I don't know. They're just evoke emotion, and these make me very happy if that's the emotion. Um, okay,
Appreciate you,
well
Dylan.
let's pass it on to David to discuss storytelling narratives. So I feel like this is a very interesting follow-on as well to Julian's presentation. So David will talk a little bit about crafting attention-grabbing pitches, talk a little bit about public speaking to help you improve how you actually deliver your message with impact. So, David, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Julian. Hold on, let me move all this out of the way here. All righty. Um, can you see my screen? Yeah?
We
Yes.
can. All
Okay, great.
good.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay. So thank you, Dylan. Thank you, Julian. By the way, Julian and I did not coordinate on this, but you set me up perfectly. It's like you tossed the ball in my direction and allowed me to I'm really bad at sports. I shouldn't use sports metaphors. I'm just going to skip that. But you get where I'm going with this. So thank you all for that. And yeah, let me get moving through this. So I like to think of when you're delivering a pitch, I like to think of it more as storytelling than pitching. And I'm going to explain why. Now, I'm going to start with something my wife hates that I use this, by the way. So I like to tell people when I start talking about pitching as storytelling that I don't really like evolution. No. Okay. My wife hates me saying this because she thinks it makes me sound crazy and but I say this for a very specific reason. Stories are very powerful things. Now, the creation story is actually really powerful and really interesting and really fun and really engaging. I don't know how many of you have ever read the Bible or any of the Hindu scriptures or any of the other fantastic creation myths that exist around the world. They're really these deep, beautiful, fascinating stories. And even if you don't believe them, they touch you, they move you, they engage you, they interest you. And on the other side, you have a little ball of energy that blew up and probably expanded. Now, by the way, that ball of energy story might be true. But the thing is, as we have seen in politics and everywhere else, truth seldom matters. Great stories are often the things that actually matter and move us. So I love this quote: story, as it turns out, is crucial to our evolution more so than opposable thumbs. Opposable thumbs let us hang on. Stories told us what to hang on to. We live in stories, and this is a really important thing to remember. And this goes to pitching. When you are going to talk to somebody, you aren't just like, could you imagine just being on the street and be like, hey, you want to give me some money? Hey, do you want to support my company? No, you're trying to get someone to believe something. And also, you are trying to get somebody to connect with you. And that really matters. So stories are our way of making sense of the world and giving it meaning. And this is always true. But there is a very, very, very big challenge here. And that big challenge is, and I think it is demonstrated incredibly well by what we are doing right now, it's that we all live in very, very different worlds. I have no idea who is on the other end of this call right now, right? There's something like 50 some people on this call right now or more, probably from different countries, different cultures, who have spoken different languages, come from different places, have different experiences and different backgrounds, right? And so, in a sense, if you are telling a story, that story is told in a language, but that language is built on a culture, on identities, on senses of time, on senses of what is right and wrong, senses of meaning, things we don't even think about. Now, this is true in our everyday lives, but this is true right now. As I am talking to you, some of this will click, it'll go like that and be like, oh, wow, I got that. And some people will sit there and be like, huh, who is this guy? Oh, by the way, who is this guy? My background is not in tech. My background, in case it wasn't already becoming obvious, is actually in religion and philosophy, hence how I approach storytelling. But that's who this guy is because that's my background. It's not necessarily yours. So as I go through this, I'm going to assume a lot. Now, one way of thinking about this is to break this down. In language, there are two senses of meaning. One is denotation. Now, this is a simple one. A direct specific meaning is distinct from an implied or associated idea. If I say the word desk, all of us can kind of more or less get a sense of what a desk is. I don't have to be too specific about that. But there's another meaning, and that's connotation. The suggestion of a meaning by a word apart from the thing it names or describes. Now, if I were to say to you, close your eyes, and now I want you to picture a desk in your mind. Each one of us will probably picture something very, very different. Right? For some, it's your desk at home. For some, maybe you have some really strong memory of childhood desks in grade school, sitting behind those old funny metal desks or whatever it might have looked like for you. And so now there's two things. We can all basically understand what a desk is, but the second I say that word, it evokes a memory, a feeling, a sense. It goes beyond itself. And so when you are talking to people, you are getting both of these things at the exact same time. And I'll give a great example of this, right? And again, like we don't have to turn off mute, but if I were to say to you, what do you think of when you hear the word Web3? There could be a dozen, dozens, hundreds of different actual immediate reactions to this. Now, this matters a lot to you, right? Because if you're going and you're trying to convince somebody about your product and you say, oh, Web3, oh, it's a Web3 product. Someone might think meme coins. Someone could think scam. Someone could think data privacy. Some could think data sovereignty. Some people could think about new payment infrastructures. That first thought, right? The second you say, oh, it's a Web3 project, and in your own head, you're saying, oh, I get that. Of course, people are going to get that. But here's the thing, people aren't actually going to get that. For the most part, people may not get exactly what you're saying right away. And it's a really, I always like to start with this because like we tend to forget, the conversations we have most are with our friends and our family, the people around us who usually understand most of, well, we hope, usually understand most of what we're saying. Which leads me to one of my first rules of storytelling and pitching in general, which is remember that your world and the world of your listener do not overlap and are often very, very far apart. One of my favorite quotes, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Now, I always like to use dating as a metaphor here. My wife gets mad. I don't know why I use dating as a metaphor. I've been married for a while now, but I still use dating as a metaphor. It's if you are sitting and you're in a relationship and you're dating somebody and you sit down, and you start talking about yourself, you think that you are getting your point across. It's much like trying to pitch, right? It's kind of a bit like dating. But the truth is, you may not be. Right? The fact that you said something does not mean that that person who is sitting across from you received it or understood it in the way you wanted. Right? They could read you wrong. They could misunderstand you. They could totally take your words differently. Hopefully, the date didn't go poorly, but I'm sure all of us have had dates have gone poorly or relationships have gone wrong because of problems with communication. We said something, we thought we were very, very abundantly clear, and we were not, at least to the other person. Now, one of the biggest problems we have in the tech world, and I don't know if anyone's ever heard this term before, it's called a metaphorical black box. It's a device used to try to describe something complicated by hiding the complications. Now, we do this all the time, but we do this a ton in Web3. So we'll start with tech in general. These are all what would be called metaphorical black boxes. What do these things actually mean? What is the cloud? Right now, when we say that, we all use this term, right? We've been using this term for a long time, and it seems like a harmless term. You're like, oh, my photos are in the cloud. Well, what is the cloud? The cloud is a giant data center somewhere. It's like a multi-football field data center, and that's American football or non-American football, depending on where you are in the world. Football-sized data center sitting in like Minnesota. There's a bunch in Amsterdam. There's a bunch in London, right? And what are they really? A bunch of computers sitting in a gigantic room. The cloud sounds ethereal. What it really is actually a very physical structure for storing data. Now, the problem is that when you say this, it sounds lovely, but it actually does not help the person on the other end understand. Like, what is a platform? Well, a platform is something you stand on for a train, or maybe it's something that you build something on top of. Right? Data mining. We use this in, talk about like this is how people get things. Well, data isn't a thing. It's not physical, it's not tactile. You can't actually mine it. And even a blockchain, right? This is a really funny one, right? If you think about a blockchain, what is a blockchain? You try to describe this to someone. I've been in this industry now since I think I started in Web3 way back in like 2015, 2016. And I'm like, oh, it's like a distributed ledger. People are like, that does not help me. Right. So all of these things are meant to try to simplify, but often they actually make things a bit more complicated for us and actually hide some of the things we're trying to say. Which leads us to point number two, which is don't try to impress your audience by making complicated things sound, simple things sound complicated. Show you really understand what you're talking about by making complicated things sound simple. You don't need to impress the person across from you. You need to connect with the person across from you. You need to create that bond, that connection with them, right? You need to not stand there. I mean, who has ever stood in front of, I mean, for those who remember being in university, you don't stand in front of the professor and be like, wow, his brain's great. So therefore I remember everything he's saying. The classes you loved were the professors you connected with, right? The ones who could take that information and make it relatable to you in some way, not the ones, you might look at the guy and say, oh, wow, he's a genius. But actually, you didn't really remember that information in the same way. Another great quote, speech belongs half to the speaker and half to the listener. Remember, you are talking to someone. You're not showing off, right? Like this isn't a beauty pageant. You're not standing up there trying to say, hey, look at me. You're actually trying to build a real human connection. And one of the best ways to build real human connections is to remember that that person is there trying to be with you, to help them build that understanding with you. You know, one of the things I like to say is also, and this isn't one of the points I'm going to make, but talk about yourself. Be a human being, right? We connect with humans. And so, like, you know, when I talk about my wife, and I talk about much to her chagrin, I talk about her a lot in my presentations, every once in a while about my son, right? It's not just simply like me being a little bit cheeky. It's actually because in doing so, it creates a humanity to me that you don't know me. You don't know who I am. You know, you don't know my life, but in this way, I'm building a connection with you on some level, hopefully. I say this not seeing your faces to see if any of you are smiling, but I hope I'm building a connection with you on some level by actually creating humanity. And when you're talking to people, pitching your projects, if you're talking, you know, whether it's the pitch competition that's going to come up or you're in front of a VC, right? I'm not saying stay there and tell your whole life story. Please don't do that. That won't go well either. But humanize yourself. We create deep connections, and that is oftentimes how we are able to relate. So one of the things we need to be careful of based on that is an echo chamber, an environment in which a person encounters only beliefs or opinions that coincide with their own. If you are sitting around with your co-founders or the other people right in your industry, in your small circle, and you're talking about certain things, you can be like, yeah, that totally makes sense, right? That makes sense. That's great. I get it. We all get it. And because you all get it, you forget sometimes that everyone else may not be getting it, right? So just because you believe it, just because it's resonating with people, test those ideas outside before you go and pitch. Find people who have no idea what you're talking about. Get outside that space and really try to see, like, do people get what I am saying? Does this make someone who is not me? Let's see. I hope this video loads. This should be a very familiar clip to most people. I'm hoping the audio plays, but it's actually perfectly well done.
Hello, my name is Saeed Jabrani. I'm the CEO of Ametabug, and we're here to revolutionize the way you report bugs on your mobile platform. Happen will revolutionize location-based mobile news aggregation as you know it. We're making the world a better place through Paxos algorithms for consensus protocols. And we're making the world a better place through software-defined data centers for cloud computing. A better place through canonical data models to communicate between endpoints. A better place through scalable, fault-tolerant distributed databases with passive transactions. And we are truly local mobile social. And we're completely low. And we're Molo so. We're low mo so, bro. We were so low mo. But now we're Molo so. No, mo so low. No. Next up, exec. Hello. My name is.
So for those who haven't seen Silicon Valley, I assume most people have seen Silicon Valley. It's a fantastic example of people being like, okay, this is awesome. And then you get up and everyone's saying the same thing in the same way, and it actually doesn't resonate. So and this leads to something Julian said, and like I said, he set me up very well for this one. So thank you again, Julian. Don't speak in terms of the incredible tech. Speak in terms of what it can do for the person listening. Very few people, and look, there are people building brilliant things in every field, and some of these innovations are truly spectacular. And you dig down into the tech, and it is really fascinating. And then most people can't understand it. Ultimately, when you are trying to reach somebody, they are thinking in terms of what does this do for me? Not what it is, right? It's not the thing in itself. It could be the coolest thing in itself. It doesn't matter. It's what does it do for me? And Julian's example, it's funny, I was going to bring this up also. Again, we did not set this up. When he talked about the iPod is a perfect one. When you walk into an Apple store, what are you really buying? Right? What you're really buying is, and you could say, right, the Apple computers do tend to be a little bit, they last a little bit longer than their PC counterparts. They are a little less buggy oftentimes, or a little less prone to viruses. But could you imagine an Apple ad that actually just says that? No. You walk into the Apple store and it's white and beautiful and perfectly designed. You are not buying a product, you're buying a lifestyle. Right. And that is what it is. Like if I said, oh, you know, they might say, oh, it's the A56 bionic chip, but that's always in the background. You know, they sell you something else first, right? So if you want to fail, assume your consumers are interested in you. People don't buy the products you create, they buy the stories you tell. Now, Apple has done this better than almost anybody. That's why everyone always uses an example. Apple back in I don't know who would remember this or if you've ever seen the commercial, but I think it was back in the mid 80s. They did this one commercial where someone ran with a sledgehammer and threw it at a computer screen, and that was the beginning of Think Different. And this is what they sold, right? It was an amazing idea that PCs are boring, they're not efficient, they don't work. Think different. This is a totally different kind of thing. Did people really understand what was different? No. But they created this niche for themselves of those people who wanted to do things differently. And in doing that, they became a multi-trillion dollar business. Yeah, I think they're the largest market cap in the world. So one of these things to keep in mind, a cognitive bias where a choice, and this goes back to Julian's presentation, is influenced more by the presentation than by the substance of the information. Again, I think the dating metaphor here is often quite too easy, right? When we make choices, if you go to a bar, oftentimes are you like, I wonder if that person has a great degree from a fantastic university. Oh, I wonder if they're a really nice person who gives to charity. No, the first thing you notice, unfortunately, for better or worse, is the external presentation of the thing, right? It is influenced by the presentation, how we talk about it, how we picture it, how we present it. And by the way, one of my favorite quotes, people say, don't judge a book by its cover. And I say, that's actually kind of wrong. I'm sure Julian can back me up here. In fact, you actually kind of should judge a book by its cover. Book covers are really carefully designed by teams of designers to reflect actually what's in that book. They're not arbitrary, right? They're not blank. The book covers are actually designed very carefully, oftentimes to reflect that thing. We do, for better or worse, as human beings, often encounter that first presentation and judge what is in it. Right now, later, we might dig deeper if we have the time and patience to do so. But the first thing we encounter is that first bit of presentation. Now, a great example of this is going back to Apple. Apple went big on privacy a couple years back. I don't know how many years ago now, about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, they started going really big on privacy. Now, I'm sure you have all seen this. It's Apple's privacy policy. And the second you see it, your eyes just go in the back of your head. You do not read this. You do not look at it. I am sure no one, at least I hope almost, no one has ever read their full policy, the privacy policy and terms and conditions. You just scroll through that and you're like, accept, right? This does nothing for you. This does something for you. Now, ostensibly, they're very similar ideas, right? One is talking about privacy. This actually says very little except for privacy, that's iPhone. That is the story. If you want a private device, don't use Google, right? Don't use Windows Phone, which died many, many years ago. No one can. Use iPhone, right? So this way, it connects this story very powerfully, very immediately. The message is strong, and you all get it right away. So, as Julian said, always remember that context matters. No good story exists in a silo. It is made meaningful by how it connects to the pieces around it. So, or to put this another way, context is to data what water is to a dolphin. If you just present raw data, if you say, look, here's our market share, here's the potential market cap, here's the potential user base, that's great. Now take it and put it together into a story that people can understand. When people look at numbers are really, really, really important in pitching. They absolutely are. Right? If you create a product that has a potential market of 5 people, no one is going to invest in that product. That is very clear. But it is also not enough. You have to be able to take those numbers and say, here is why they matter. Here is why they become powerful. Here is how they connect to tell a bigger story. Whoever you're talking to is not going to do that for you. You have to help them do it. So again, confirmation bias. We tend to search for, interpret, and favor information in a way that confirms what we already believe. Now, let's give an example of what I mean here. Now, again, you don't have to answer this, but think about in your head very quickly, what would these stats tell us? 45% of teenagers say they are online almost constantly. 32% of teenagers suffer anxiety. By the way, these are true numbers and they have actually gone up. Anxiety among teens has increased by 20% since the start of social media. Now, if we look at this very quickly together, we would say, okay, well, what that means is teenagers who are online using social media creates anxiety. And that's a fair assumption, right? Because we've heard this in the media now, it's been around us before. Now, is that true? Don't know. Is that what these numbers say? Don't know. But that's what our interpretation would be very automatically when we see these things, is because there's already a story in our head that tells us what these things are. And if we want someone to understand it, we have to tell that story for them, or they will tell the own story in their own head. If we do not connect the dots for people using that data, they will connect the dots in their own way. So be very mindful when you use these kinds of numbers, when you use statistics, they're not obvious. or they are obvious to you, but they may be obvious to someone else in a very different kind of way. The context of your story matters a lot. Be very clear about your market. Be very clear about who you think you're going to reach. Be very clear about all of these things. And then when you put these numbers in, they are proof points for your story, right? And that's the thing. These become data becomes proof point for the bigger context of what you're saying. Otherwise, it just becomes random numbers that people can interpret. And of course, finally, be very aware of your audience and be ready to adapt. Another favorite quote, the hallmark of human being is the ability to adapt to any situation. Now, the reason I say this is really important is that in any form of communication, that there's this phenomenological sense of being there with another person. Now, online is harder, right? I don't see any of your faces. You all may be head down on the desk taking a nap. Right. So when you can't see the face of the person you're talking to, this becomes much more challenging. But when you are in conversation with somebody, I'm sure we have all had this, right? You're talking to someone across from you, and all of a sudden you see them yawning or looking away or looking at their watch, kind of looking down. Clear indicators that you aren't resonating, that connection is not forming. When you are talking to people. Right now, whether that is one-on-one or whether it's an investor meeting or whether you're pitching to 20 or 30 people and you're sitting in a room, are they looking at you? Are they paying attention? Are they engaging with you? Can you see a smile? Can you get a laugh? Whatever it might be. And if you're not, think on your feet a little bit. And that's hard, right? That takes practice. And that's something, a whole nother workshop on public speaking, that's an important one. But be aware and be willing to adapt to the person you are talking to. Don't think I got to get through this thing. And yes, sometimes you do, but it is more important to get your message across, even if you have to change it a little bit to get that point. You may have worked for 40 hours on that presentation, but if the person across from you is looking down at their watch, it's not landing. It is far better to be willing to adapt a little bit, tell a story, connect with them, get personal, ask them a question, than it is to try to force your way through something. Also really important, and this is always a funny one and so sadly true, right? The average attention span of a human in the year 2012 seconds. Now it's around 8 seconds. A goldfish's attention span is 9 seconds. Right now, the average human has an attention span that is less than a goldfish. That is hard. Well, first of all, it's very scary and sad on where we've come in the world, but it's also a hard thing that means move quickly. Now, it doesn't mean speak quickly. It means don't stick on something. Don't overburden the idea. When you get through it, say your piece and keep going because you will. There's a quickly decaying line of attention. And if you do not keep moving through that story, if you do not keep changing it, if you do not keep flowing, that person will get lost. And once they're lost, it's much, much harder to get them back. So bring it all together. Assume your audience doesn't understand you. Use clear human language. Talk to people, right? Really talk to people. Don't talk to an idea of a person. Don't try to talk to a CMO or a CTO or a CEO. Talk to people, talk to human beings, because ultimately, people aren't their job titles. People are much more than that. They really appreciate when you talk to them as human beings. Focus on outcomes, not features. For better or worse, we think about what it does for us, not how cool it is or what it is or how much time you spent on it, developing it, building it, caring about it. Talk about what it does for them. Connect with them on a human level. Bring that idea to them on a human level. Show what it can do to them and help them get there through context. Provide that meaningful context. Help them get there through that context. Bring them into your world. Help it make sense. And then, of course, be mindful. If you see you are losing people, be willing to go off script, be willing to adapt a little bit, be willing to change your way. And like the last one I said, which I did not include here, which is simply be human. Be willing to bring yourself in. You're a human being, you matter, and ultimately create connections. So very quickly on this. So what does that look like in practice? And we could do a whole nother session on that just on pitch building. But a great way to think about bringing this together is the what. What is it that you are doing? The so what, like why does it matter, right? This is that what is helping someone to understand. The so what is what does it do for me? What now is sort of, okay, cool. What would happen if you succeed? What does that look like? What is the context? And the why should I believe you is to show them what you can do, and that is the human piece of this. Right. So this is again, this slide deck will be shared afterwards, so you can see this again. And again, if you have questions, of course, you can reach out to me. I do not, unlike Julian, I don't respond much over X. At the beginning, when Dylan said I have a ton of experience, it's largely just because I'm a dinosaur and I've been in this industry a long time. That said, I'm more than happy to answer questions, and you can get my contact through Dylan, of course, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope that was helpful.
Nice. And appreciate it, David. When I say David has a lot of experience, he started us off this presentation talking a little bit about great stories of history time, like the Bible and Hindu scripture. He was actually there during that time. So yeah, his experience goes way back. Honestly, Julie and David, both of these presentations have been awesome and beyond just like the theoretical side, which I think is really interesting. I like how you've given us actual concrete tools to just think through how we approach what we are building and how we can actually express that. Now, let's open the floor for some questions. For the audience, this is your chance to address any specific presentation challenges, get clarification on any aspect of delivery or design. I'm going to start off with my question. Julian, I am not someone who has a good eye for design. Uh, how how can I build up that muscle and improve and start recognizing that that website that you showed is not actually a good website?
Well, it was. It turned out that it was like Zumba.com. I think the way to sharpen your eye is like when you're looking at something and you don't like it or you think it doesn't work, just go a bit beyond that first thought. And I mean, usually those first like few seconds when you're reacting into something, uh, it's very hard to actually counterweigh that. So don't force yourself to like something, but maybe try to understand why you don't like it. So that could be a good thing. Then there are a few sites that they represent, let's say, they showcase what would be the implicit, I don't know, pretty much agreement on what is aesthetically pleasing in our society, which I don't agree with that, but there exists. Like one is awards, for example. It's a site that when a site gets an award or an award from awards, it means that it's usually nice. So maybe expose yourself to those and think like, do I like them or not? And if you do like them, think why do you like them? And if you don't, try to verbalize why don't you. So don't stick with your reaction, but try to add some substance around it, and over time you're going to build the muscle.
Nice. And I think I'll kind of touch on something that you've taught me as well is go with your gut. Sometimes you have a very just understanding of something looks good, sometimes it doesn't. And I think the skill is really in describing why it looks good or why it doesn't look good. So go with your gut to an extent, learn some of the basic things that Julian was mentioning as well at the end of his slides. It could probably take you a good portion of the way there. I've definitely looked to improve a little bit based on just very basic concepts. And I think getting the basic concepts gets you very far, and it can improve so much with that. Even just anything in life, but I think in design and storytelling as well with David, uh, putting a little bit to work compounds over time quite a bit. Um, for you, David, a lot of people have struggle actually speaking in front of people. Do you have any public speaking advice for these people who get a little bit nervous? Is it envisioning their audience in underwear, or is that not really a thing anymore? Not PG.
No, yeah. No, it's a funny one. There's a reason why people say envision people in their underwear. It's not when people get in front of people in public speaking, it's often this idea that there's this intensity of this experience. Like this matters so, so, so very much. And we become a bit crushed by that expectation. One of my, there's this idea, I think it came from the Buddha, that imagine if you put some sand in your hand, right? And you just let it sit there, it will go nowhere. But all of a sudden, if you clasp your hand to try to hold on to it, it actually runs out between your fingers, right? The more tightly you hold on to something, the more worried you are about it, the less likely you are to succeed at it. Now, this is very easy to say, but this is actually the goal of public speaking, which is to understand it's fine. It's actually okay. you're going to fail, right? Here's the thing, like I have failed. Like I've gotten up in front of people and I have done a terrible job at times and I have just crashed and burned. I've forgotten what I wanted to say. My notes haven't worked, the screen didn't work, and it's all just gone terribly, terribly wrong. And you know what happened the next day? Absolutely nothing. Really, that's the thing is that you have to remember that if it goes wrong, nothing happens. Now, that's easier said than done. Now, one way to get to that point is to practice, right? That means get up and be ready to fail, right? Get up in front of pitch competitions and say, you know what? This may not go okay. And the more times you do that, the more times you get up and say, look, it's okay if I fail, you will start to succeed because you will let go of that idea that you might not. Now, I know it sounds a bit hokey on a certain level, but actually, if you start to practice it, you will see how much easier it becomes. Right? Like when you first, and it's the first time you do anything. If you really care about it, it's hard. And I
Mhm.
get that. But the best way to get better is to just let go a little bit.
Nice. I'll stick with you, David, and then we'll go to some questions that I think cover both you and Julian. Henry asked a good question related to public speaking. When pitching, is there a preferred tone or energy to have, and does it depend more on the design?
Yeah, I think, look, it'll depend a little bit on what you're pitching, of course, right? There's going to be a bit of a difference if you're pitching a game than if you're pitching sort of some kind of decentralized physical infrastructure. Obviously, your audiences will probably be a bit different. But the one thing I will say, no matter what, is be what I said in the presentation, which is really be human. Because the people you're talking to are humans. Right? Like these people you're connecting with, you really have to sit with and just understand that it's okay. Create that connection with them. Whatever you do, right? Don't think you need to impress them. Don't think you need to be up here while they're down here. And if you're up here, they're going to want to buy your product. Because guess what? Like I said about the professor that was way up here, like that was a smart guy. I don't want to take a class with him again. Right? The one that related to you is the one you remember. So this is true no matter what the field is. Yes, it's going to be a little bit different from one field to the next, but the most important thing is to be a human being, be with the people with, talk to them in human ways.
Nice. Um, Julian, I am curious how you're thinking about design when there's tons of data for a company, or maybe there's extremely technical concepts. How could you actually design proper slides and proper charts and visuals to actually effectively communicate this data or this technical concept to people in a concrete way, or maybe explain these technical concepts to non-technical audiences? How do you typically approach that?
I think you answered yourself in the question. Like the audience is key, right? If the audience is not technical, then probably you would prefer to approach for something more minimalistic. Like you don't need to necessarily explain it all because there's a lot of good that can be done by, like technology should be, there's this quote, right? Technology is like magic because it's good when it's invisible kind of thing. So the more invisible you can make it to those non-technical audiences, maybe there's a favor in that. If your goal is to show that like what you're talking about and you want to present yourself as a domain expert, then you can make it a little bit more complex, but then the implicit goal is for them to perceive you as a technical expert versus them understanding the technicalities of things. So like the goal of that particularly composition changes a bit. The way that I address that though is that I worked at Aztec. I don't know if you're familiar with that project, but Aztec is a fairly technical, and we did develop a design system for the diagrams that it would have three levels, and depending the complexity needed, visually would get more simpler and simpler. So let's say the more technical it gets, the more simple. And by simple, I mean like in terms of shapes, in terms of colors, like everything was way more constrained and those were used for documentation, for example. And then we had the more flashy ones, those they were more, if you will, like non-technical audience friendly in a way, but they would only just scratch one or two layers of information. So there's dimmers you can pretty much play. I think that the more complex it is what you want to show, aim for simpler visual style. If you do both, then it's very likely you're not gonna it's going to look like a mess. And in the other way, if you do something really simple and you pick like a simple visual language, then it may look a bit cheap in a way or underproduced. So I would say play with those dimmers, and try to never match them both, like complexity of the visuals versus complexity of the technical concept that you're
Nice.
explaining.
Cool. Maybe let's end it on one last question. And this should be a little bit fun. What is an unconventional technique that you guys have used, either in design or within storytelling, that kind of eschews some of the typical knowledge or something that you would impart on someone here, but seemed to work well because it fit the right audience or it fit the right vibe or feelings. Um, maybe David, we can start with you. What's a good unconventional technique that you think has worked quite well?
Well, denying evolution always works in my favor. No, but one of the things I always like to say is like one of the interesting ones is all of these we exist in context and culture, right? If you have favorite pop culture movies, favorite things that people are really popular in the world right now, don't be afraid to put those places. Now, I'm going to tell you a really funny secret, which I never told my previous company. When I wasn't working in Web3, I worked for a marketing technology company for a while, but quite a big scale up. And they were doing a rebranding, and we were trying to come up with a tagline for them. And I had talked to countless people, and then I was watching, and I'm not ashamed of this. One of my philosophies on life is read great books and watch bad movies. So I was watching Pitch Perfect, great movie with Anna Kendrick. And
Is it a
what
good
early,
movie?
yeah, it's a good movie. So early on in that movie, she says, make good choices. And I was like, crap, that is a fantastic tagline for this company because that is ostensibly what they're trying to do. And that line resonates with people right now. And believe it or not, now I never told them this, that is actually the tagline that they took on for the company became make good choices. And because I had an ear to popular culture, it made sense both inside and outside the company. So one of those things I'd say is with storytelling is pay attention to kind of what's happening around you outside of your industry, and oftentimes it will resonate in a broader sense.
Nice. That's awesome. And last word to you, Julian.
Um, I think that, I mean, I don't know if it's very unconventional, but designing by subtracting things sometimes helps. Like you start with a design and then just take it to the edge on how much you can subtract. It's a bit what I was also saying in the presentation. It's not really unconventional. There's one thing though that we did back in 2016, 2017, well, a few years, 2019 until 2019. I worked at Lisk. And back in the day, Lisk had a wallet and we did like a login flow, onboarding flow, when just you needed to set up a passphrase, which was like 12 words and all the classic drill that we're all familiar with. Like if people struggle now, imagine like, I don't know, a bunch of years ago, it was even worse. So we had like this really beautiful thing and we went to user testing. I think that user testing is on my website actually, because it's super funny. Nobody understood anything. But it was like almost absurd at some point. We tested it with like 20 people and 19 people, they were like frustrated and really having a bad time, over just completing a very simple login. So what we ended up doing is something called a reversal, which is more UI UX than brand maybe, but it's the fun in some way you need to force yourself to design for like the anti-user, and the truth is like those edge cases, they're usually the ones that are going to come into your plate. Nobody's going to tell you, oh, this works. Like the ones that they're going to need to address are like the edge cases, right? Like, oh, this didn't work, or oh, I lost this, oh, I lost that. So maybe designing with the anti-user in mind may be unconventional, but if there's any advice that I would give, especially if you're just new to design, just go with the conventional first. And once you're like really, really comfy with that, you can start like bending it a little bit. But at the beginning, like conventional usually gets you in a really good spot.
Nice. That's awesome. Um, well, I think that's it. Let me just do a quick couple minutes to close us out. So resharing my screen. Uh, this is the end of Founder Basecamp, the learning session. So next week is our pitch day. So just a very, very quick recap on what we've learned. In session one, we focused on idea refinement and market validation. We learned how to identify real problems and validate solutions. In session two, we explored go-to-market strategies and marketing fundamentals to actually help you get and reach your first customers effectively. In session three, we covered fundraising essentials, basically understanding different funding sources and crafting compelling investor pitches. And today we've learned about how to actually create engaging presentations, engaging pitches through this effective use of storytelling and visual design. Tomorrow, we again all have an office hours. I'll present and do a little ad hoc presentation on finding your co-founder and the best ways to evaluate and pick your partner for your startup journey. So really, we would love to have you attend pitch day and participate. While we cannot accommodate every pitch, we do encourage everyone to apply for the pitch day, but then also for the hackathon that comes afterwards. There's no homework this week. But if you'd like to be eligible to participate in the pitch competition, apply by Friday. We'll get you connected to some developer resources. Just fill out the forms I shared. We'll share it in the group chat as well. Then finally, we want to hear your feedback on the program. Like what worked, what didn't work, sessions did you like the most, what topics did we miss? Honestly, this is our first iteration. As I've been saying throughout this entire session of Founder Basecamp, fix things that take what you learn, fix things that don't work, take the things that do work, improve on them, just constantly iterate. And that's what we're going to be doing with Founder Basecamp. So really, thank you everyone for your active participation throughout Founder Basecamp. I'm super excited to see your pitches, the amazing startups that you'll build on Starknet. David, Julian, thank you so much for closing us out here on session 4. To Tung, you have been awesome. Thank you for putting everything together. Really appreciate everyone listening. You guys rock. Thank you for participating in these sessions, the Telegram. And this isn't the end of the journey here. Like this is just the beginning. And we're excited to see what you do. Come join us next week for the pitch day. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you for being the captain of this ship.
Thanks, everyone. Chat with everyone later. And again, feel free to message in the Telegram group. We're always there. Cool.
Bye, guys.